Chapter 4. Some Memories Never Fade. Summary. As Nora prepares for something long buried, a chilling relic resurfaces. The bunny mask. Untouched and waiting. Deep within the tank system, Caden attempts a reset on Lilith, only to trigger a haunting mechanical scream that shakes him to his core. Delilah, glitching and restrained, silently pleads for help, trapped between programming and desperation. Meanwhile, Claira begins her search through the facility, unaware of the eyes watching her from the shadows, and the familiar face waiting beneath the surface. Tensions rise, secrets stir, and the past is far from done with them. Prologue. Nora's perspective. The clock blinked 4:02 a.m. when Nora unlocked her front door, her movements quiet, mechanical. She tossed her keys into a bowl by the entrance and, with a casual flick of her thumb, tapped her phone's voicemail button. You have one missed message from Roy. To listen, press 1. As the message played, Nora wandered into the kitchen, humming an eerie old tune, soft, lilting, almost like a lullaby from long ago. At the sink, she scrubbed her hands with slow, deliberate motions. The water washed away the night's stains, swirling pink at the drain's edges. Hearing Roy's news, she let out a soft laugh, a genuine sparkle buried in a sinister hum. The message filled a quiet space as Nora wandered toward her closet. Here, hidden under a clean black duffel bag, she retrieved a small locked case. Inside, a sleek, pristine bunny mask. The painted grin wide, the eyes unsettling hollow. It seemed almost new, as if it had been waiting all this time, untouched by dust or age. She traced her finger over its surface and smiled. Soon, she whispered before snapping the case shut. Chapter 4. Inside Lilith and Delilah's tank. The door sealed shut behind him with a hiss. Caden stood alone inside the chamber. The hum of the old machinery sounded like a heartbeat. The elevator waited ahead, its panel blinking with tired red light. He stepped inside. With a shudder and a low mechanical whine, the lift descended, yet the glass around him offered no view, only darkness, pressing against the sides like a living thing. When the lift finally stopped, a set of double doors peeled open. Caden stepped forward, and the abyss swallowed him whole. The tank stretched out in every direction, a massive freestanding cylinder of blackened water in faint, drifting lights, its domed ceiling somewhere far, far above. Two figures floated in the gloom, Delilah and Lilith. Lilith was still, save for the occasional flicker of a glitch through her limbs. Delilah was not. Her body trembled, small twitches running along her hands, her head giving short, almost imperceptible jerks. And her eyes, too bright in the darkness, locked onto him the moment he emerged. Caden's pulse quickened. Just a glitch. Not like before, we had a power surge. He repeated in his head, forcing himself to push forward. Delilah shifted again subtly. She was fighting some invisible restraint. Caden drifted closer to Lilith. He could feel Delilah's gaze burning into him the entire time. He notes her hand half twitching upward as if to call out to him, then jerking back. Was she trying to tell me something? No, she can't be. This has to be due to the power, he continued to reassure himself. The tension coiled tighter. Caden reached out carefully, fingers brushing Lilith's shoulder. Her body gave a little shudder, lines of glitch static crawling up her arms, but otherwise remained unresisting. He thumbed the reset device clipped to his belt and pressed it gently against the nape of Lilith's neck. The unit blinked green. After the usual spams, her tail whips this way and that way, her arms flailed, then a soft whirring hummed from inside her frame as internal systems rebooted. Lilith sagged for a moment. Her head slumped forward, then slowly rose again, her movements smooth, mechanical. Caden let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Behind him, Lilith let out a noise, a faint, static hiccup. Her body reckoned forward a few inches, and then a sound ripped through Lilith's chest. Not words, not screech, a mechanical shriek, raw, broken, tearing through the waters like a blade. Krah! Caden flinched instinctively, backing off, his heart hammering against his ribs. Lilith convulsed once, violently, then stilled, her eyes rebooting with a dull flicker. Delilah twitched toward him, glitching violently like something inside her cracked under pressure. Her mouth open, static bubbling out, but she slammed it shut again, holding herself back. Their eyes met. Delilah's wide and frantic, Lilith distant and cold. Caden forced himself not to bolt, but yet he turned away, moving steadily back toward the elevator chamber. Delilah stayed frozen in place, her hand hovering halfway toward him. Trembling, glitching, but she didn't follow. Through the thick glass of the elevator as it hissed closed behind him, Caden caught one last glimpse. Delilah pressed her palm lightly against the tank wall, a ghost against the void. And Lilith, still behind her, still watching with her hazel, golden-hued orbs. As the lift rattled upward, Caden leaned against the wall, shivering. What exactly was that? Water dripped from his sleeves and hair, pooling at his boots. The scream, the long mechanical shriek, still rang in his ears long after he was gone. She watched him leave, her eyes wide and full of something he couldn't name. Grief, guilt, hope. Meanwhile, Lilith and Delilah's perspective. Delilah's mind screamed against the hold Lilith had on her. He was right there. We could have warned him. We could have finally put an end to all this. Don't you see? You're the perfect escape out of here. You're different. People care about you. Lilith's internal systems cracked with static, her override protocols firing again and again. No, Lilith's thoughts echoed grimly, echoing in Delilah's systems. Not like this. We will find another way. If you move too soon, you'll only scare him away. Delilah trembled, trapped by the very programming she was trying to break. Watching Caden disappear through the latch, watching their chance slip away, was worse than any system crash, worse than any shutdown. Lilith turned away, her form stiffening as her own thoughts fractured. It's not time yet. It's not time yet. But when and how? But even she wasn't sure how much longer they could wait. Turning away from where Caden had exited, Lilith decides to take a small swim around to try and clear her thoughts, to try and figure out a way to tell him. In her peripherals, she catches a glimpse of a familiar face. Turning to confirm her sight, she once again freezes in place. Her eyes lock onto her as a smile crosses her metal lips. Claira, you came. I'm so sorry. Her mind races with continuous apologies. Above the tank, the observatory tank stretches before Claira, open and vast like a strange underwater world all its own. A large gate lined the perimeter, ensuring that only access came through the entrance near the far end. She paused at the gate, looking out over the tank domes, some glowing softly in the darkness, others more muted, as if waiting for something to stir inside. She hadn't seen anyone to ask for help yet, so she decided to check the tanks herself. Claira's footsteps were light as she walked along the path, eyes scanning each of the tanks. She couldn't help but smile, lost in thought for a moment, memories of Maria drifting to the surface of her mind. She had promised herself she wouldn't worry, but something had been gnawing at her all day. Maria hadn't responded to any of her messages, and she'd never gone this long without checking in. The first tank she approached was the one with the sea bonnies, their fish-like bodies drifting lazily through the water. Their heads, bonnie heads, glided through the liquid with an odd, almost comical grace. Bonnie had always been her favorite animatronic, but seeing one as a fish? Shaking her head with a small chuckle, Claira moved on, her eyes falling onto the next tank. The sharks. Sly was already creeping through the fake underwater greenery, his movements subtle but purposeful. Claire smirked, admiring the way he slinked through the plants, his dark shape barely visible except for those intense, focused eyes. It always amazed her how realistic the animatronics had become. Mechatronics, she thought. A bit of a mouthful, but that's what they were. Mechanical marvels. Their full name is subaquatic mechatronics, so there is that. Hank, as usual, was prowling the tank in the opposite direction, his movements jerky, suspicious. Claira couldn't shake the feeling that he was always watching. Always. There was something unnerving about the way he lurked, a predator, never quite at ease. Mac was swimming across from Hank now, lazily drifting in circles. Claire watched him for a moment, noting how the shark's tank was always full of tension, like a simmering pot waiting to boil over. Her thoughts were interrupted when she moved on to the next tank, the one with the neon glowing depths. She squinted into the dim light. The glow from the creature's bioluminescent bodies lit up the space, casting a faint, eerie light across the water. She could make out Marco and Polo, their long, serpentine forms winding around each other in the tank's dark depths. Marco had taken on a new look, a vibrant, almost neon lime green that stood out against the darkness of the water. Polo had given a shiny pink hue, his body reflecting the glow like a beacon. They were striking, their colors vivid against the water. In a way, they reminded Claira of how much Maria had always adored them. She could practically hear Maria's voice in her head, telling her how much she loved the creature's odd and winding movements. She moved on, each step taking her further down the line of tanks. The next one sent a shiver down her spine. Zeus. The tank's dark, haunting water concealed him well, but there he was, those bright, dagger-like teeth gleaming under the lights. The sudden flash of his yellow eyes made her breath catch, like he sensed her presence. His grin was wide and sharp, a mechanical grin that made Claira feel as if she was the prey, rather than just an observer. She didn't linger. Moving forward, Clara's pace slowed as she came to the final tank in the row, where Octavia swam gracefully across the glass. Her gentle movements were a welcome contrast to the rest. Octavia had always been a calming sight. Claira smiled, her thoughts drifting to conversation her and Maria had shared about Octavia, about how Caden and her had really bonded while working on Octavia. While she loved the mechatronic, Claira remembered how Maria would never stop talking about Caden. She even remembered always mentioning how Caden seemed to understand Octavia like no one else could. The calming side of things, Claira thought, reflecting on how they saved the scary animatronics for the first tanks, then leaving the magical, calming ones for the last. But something was wrong. Her smile faded as she noticed Octavia wasn't gliding in her usual relaxed way. No, Octavia wasn't simply swimming. She was staring at the other tank, and Claira noticed something familiar. A water suit was floating in the next tank. Her heart skipped. Could it be? She moved quickly, hurrying toward the next tank. She was almost certain it was Maria. It wasn't Maria, it was Caden. Caden was swimming, but not alone. He was moving swiftly through the water, away from Delilah, and then her eyes caught something else, someone new. Someone she hadn't seen before. Her illuminating golden eyes stared back at her for a few moments before the fiery red, coal-black mermaid turned tail and swam to Delilah. Huh, you knew, Claira thought, frowning. Haven't heard anything about new animatronics coming here. Before she could gather her thoughts, she was interrupted by a soft, sweet voice. Are you lost? The voice came from behind her. Claira turned and found Nora standing there, her smile bright, but something was off. That was when Claira noticed the unusual glint in Nora's eyes, something she couldn't quite place. I'm looking for my friend Maria, Claira replied, forcing a smile. Have you seen her? Nora's expression faltered for just a moment before she spoke. No, I haven't seen her around. I've only been here for a short time today. I had to deliver the next big thing for the water park. Nora's voice was warm, but there was something distant in her words. You should come along to the big debut. It'll be amazing. VR underwater. Claira nodded, still unsure. Maria mentioned she had work for the next few days. She was supposed to be on shift, but I haven't heard from her since. I figured I'd check in. Nora's smile flickered again, almost imperceptibly. Maria? She moved to the Mega Pizzaplex for a job there, Nora said casually. I'll let her know you were looking for her. Moved. Claira felt a knot tighten in her stomach. That wasn't like Maria, not at all. Maria had always talked about wanting to work at the Mega Pizzaplex, but she would have told her. She would have told her. As Nora turned to leave, Claira's unease only deepened. She hadn't liked the tone of their conversation. It was forced, too quick. It didn't make sense. Claira then spots Caden from afar, heading into the mermaid storage house. She races over to him. Hey Caden, look, I know you two were pretty close and maybe I'm in over my head here, but Maria, not messaging for 2 days now, no sign of her on social media or anything. Not to mention, ever since I've been here, I'm getting an off feeling. That red-haired woman didn't help. I'm just worried about Maria. I'm not buying her being transferred to the Mega Pizzaplex. She would have told me something that huge. After her little to no breath ramble on about her friend, she inhales deeply. It's now that she notices Caden's already shaken expression. Hey, you look unusually pale. Are you alright? Caden remains momentarily silent. His face showed that he was in deep thought. Finally, he spoke up, his voice slightly broken and shaky. Something's definitely not right here, he agreed grimly. They agreed to meet after work. They were going to the Mega Pizzaplex themselves. They had to find Maria. As they left, far back in the shadows, Lilith and Delilah watched from their tanks. Delilah pressed herself against the glass. A silent scream knocked in her throat, and Lilith's empty eyes gleamed just for a moment with a flicker of regret. End of Chapter 4. Epilogue. Claira kicked off her shoes as she stepped through the front door, the familiar squeaks of her 2 hedgehogs greeting her from across the room. A tired but genuine smile crossed her face. Hello, you two, she said warmly, walking over to their enclosure. How was your day, huh? She dropped a treat into the habitat for each of them. Sonic, the hyperblue blur of energy, and Shadow, his darker, moodier counterpart, named after her childhood favorite characters. Sonic immediately darted forward with excitement, while Shadow took a slower, more suspicious approach before claiming his snack. Good boys, she murmured, scratching gently behind their tiny ears. Their soft squeaks filled the quiet room, comforting but bittersweet. Claire's smile faded. A sigh escaped her lips as she leaned against the edge of the enclosure. Still no sign of Maria, she whispered. The hedgehog squeaked again as if echoing her concern. She gave them one last affectionate pat before trudging to her bed. Flopping onto the mattress, she stared blankly up at the ceiling, feeling the weight of worry settle into her chest. None of this made any sense. Maria disappearing without a word, the strange way Nora brushed off her questions, the lingering unease that followed her even now. Grabbing a pillow, Claire pressed it tightly to her face and let out a muffled scream. Something is just not right. She cried into the fabric, the words bouncing off the walls of her empty room. After a moment, she tossed the pillow aside, reaching over to her nightstand. She grabbed her diary, its well-worn cover a comfort to her hands, and flipped it open to a blank page. With a trembling hand, she set her pen down and began to write. Dear Diary, Day 2, still no Maria. She paused, the silence of the house wrapping around her like a heavy blanket. Then, a sound. Both Sonic and Shadow suddenly froze, their little bodies going rigid. Their ears swiveled sharply toward the front door. Slowly, deliberately. Knock, knock, knock. Clara's heart stumbled in her chest. Her mind scrambled trying to think of who was at the door. She didn't invite anyone over, and Caden wasn't due off work for another few hours. There it was again, only this time, louder, quicker. Knock, knock, knock. Shifting from her bed, she anxiously moves out from her room into the front door, but not before a reassuring shh, it's okay, to her hedgehogs. Peeking out the door's hole, she squints to see clearer. Nothing. Still, the heavy feeling pressed down on her shoulders. She unlocked the door, hand trembling, and cracked it open just enough to peer out into the night. Nothing but darkness. Left, right, even up, nothing but the empty skeletal outlines of trees clawing at the sky. Claira slammed the door shut and threw the lock. Her breath came in quick, shallow bursts. Slowly she turned, scanning every corner of the room, every shadow, every crack. Everything was exactly where it should be, and yet it wasn't. She checked the windows, each one locked, before retreating back to Sonic and Shadow, who still hadn't moved, still staring at the door with silent alarm. It's fine, little guys, Claira whispered, not quite believing herself. Just some prankster, that's all. Her fingers lingered on their tiny heads longer than necessary, grounding herself in the simple, warm reality of them. Finally, she switched on her TV and PlayStation. The soft glow spinning across the room, the familiar menu music filled the silence. Thin, almost brittle against the weight of the house. But even as she sat there, pretending to relax, Claira couldn't shake the feeling someone had been there. Something was still watching. The end.